Another day. One thing I like about working with wood, and it is called Nature's Composite, and I am going to build a composite plane after this, a cozy, but it's light, and you add just those few little blocks in there, and even those blocks that are separated, those aren't supposed to be stiffeners, but boy, that really made a difference, and it stiffened up that spar really nicely. We're back at it today. Yesterday, these were glued into place. I've taken and just sanded that nice and smooth. There's a bunch of glue and crap. Still got a little bit of glue there, nice and smooth though. And I've laid them out to figure out where I'm going to put the web stiffeners for the web joints. And then that brought up a few questions. So let's look at this one first. Here's my web joint here. On the plans it says here for the web splices, just an inch on each side, use DHW 25A, that's 1/8 ply, just where all the splices are. So I've got one splice and it lines up here where there's going to be a blocking in here. So DH29C, this part right here in green, is 1/2 inch block plywood that fits between the rails here that adds support for this hinge, this bracket. My joint is just on the edge of that. Let me get this lined up so this is actually 29. That's how much it's out in 6 feet. So line that up with that. I made the line for that. And you can see the joint is right there. So instead of putting a 1/8 piece here to cover this, and then beveling a 1/2 inch piece here for this blocking, I'm just going to extend that 1/2 inch all the way down so that it covers this joint and then gives support to this hinge bracket that is right here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just making this stronger by putting 1/2 inch all the way across there. It's going to be nice and flush. That'll be a good strong joint. I think it's a more elegant answer than putting a 1/8 and then beveling the 1/2 inch to go over top of it. I'm going to add weight, maybe I don't know, like 1/10 of an ounce or something onto that. But that's what I'm going to do. So as we go down, my next joint was right here. This is a 3/4 inch DHW 33, 3/4 by 3/4 piece of wood that goes on here, adding support for these compression struts that go this way, and they mount onto here as well. So that just gives, I guess, support for these compression struts. So that's a piece of 3/4 scrap, 3/4 by 1/4. So it's going to go like this and like this. So there's a 3/4 piece of wood that's going to go on there, right over top of where my joint was. Next to that, if we line this up, there are these, this is hardware that's on the back side. I wasn't sure what's going on with that. There is some 1/2 inch ply blocking between the spars, so where my green is here, there's 1/2 inch blocking in here for this clamp. I wasn't sure what this clamp or what this thing is. If I take you to the big plans, that's at 60 inches, so on the big plans it's 30 inches. It's this right here. So this is that L bracket that's hidden on the back side of the rear spar. There's that 3/4 inch block that goes this way on top of the spar. These are the compression struts that come in this way. Then there's that little space, and there's that little gusset right there. Inside here, there's 1/2 inch blocking. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did down at the far end. Instead of a 1/8 web splicing here, I'm going to go 1/2 inch from here to here. That gives the 1/2 inch block for that hinge, and it gives me an extra blocking for my joint. I don't really need that, but same as the other end, I could have the 1/8 from here to here, but then I'd have to put 1/2 inch on top of that and bevel out that 1/4 inch or whatever it is where I have to put that block there. So I think I'm just going to have 1/2 inch block across that entire thing. I think it's going to be easier. I think it's going to give more support and just a more elegant solution than having to bevel out the 1/2 inch plywood that's just going to sit on top of that 1/8 plywood that's supposed to be down here. Did I confuse anyone any more than I'm already confused? Just moving down to another one here. I've been pondering, figuring out where I'm going to need all these blocks and stuff. So there's a DHW 29D, 1/2 inch goes between the blocks, so that'll go right in here. It'll make this nice and flush. Then the DHW 29G between the spar and the bracket, you put that on after the ribs, and it's 3/4 inch ply. So it sits up and it gives you, it'll be a nice piece of plywood that's going to sit right in here, and it's going to give you support for a bracket that's on there. And that's where I'm starting to wonder what this DHNG4 is. If you come over to section GG here, you can see here's the cap, here's the cap. There's my wing stiffener that was in there, right here, right here. There's my 1/2 inch piece of plywood that I'm going to put in there. This is that big 3/4 inch piece of plywood. This is the DHAW bracket. Your aileron tube goes through there. And then DHNG4. I'm not sure what it is, whether it's a piece of plastic that goes inside there, or whether it's a piece of plastic that's on the outside that's that much smaller. It's acting as a bearing. And here you don't see really anything. Down at this end, they explain it a little bit here. I wonder if any of this is actually in focus. DHNG4 pop rivet in place. So it's plastic and pop rivets in there. That's why I'm wondering if this hole is just a little bit smaller than the hole in the metal bracket behind it, so that that smaller hole acts as a bearing for the aileron tube. And you can see here that there's a little space in there, and that's why DHNG4 with a question mark. So the metal bracket is big, and that plastic bearing gets riveted on behind it, but the hole in it is just a little bit smaller, so that your aileron tube is riding on the plastic, not metal on metal. And they show that in a couple different ones here, where you see the hole, and you see the hole. I'm not positive, but I'm thinking that's what's going on there. All right, there's right here. Rivet, 4 places each assembly, head placed against DHNG4. So there's a plastic piece that goes over there, and I'm assuming the plastic piece is just that little bit smaller than the metal hole, so that it provides a bearing surface for the aileron tube. As I was pondering the plans, I came across this, something I missed. All these web stiffeners that I put in the other day, yesterday, DHW7, 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 7B to be exact, I put into place. But as I was looking at the plans, I came across, I just colored it in red, I came across this, and it's not labeled DHW7B, and I just put a label on there, but it says 1/2 inch square, which is what those other ones are. Note, root hinge is cut 1 inch shorter than middle and outboard hinges. So, that's the middle one. The hinge goes there for the flap. The hinge goes there for the flap. The hinge goes here for the flap. 1 inch shorter than the middle. Those are all cut about 9 3/4, 9 3/4, 9 3/4, 10 inches. So even though the blocking is 9 3/4, this hinge is an inch shorter. Maybe this hinge blocking should be an inch shorter, but in fact it's only 5 inches. So 5.5 inches. So it got me wondering where and how much hinge I should put in there. So I go to the big plans. The hinge ends at 6 inches, so that's 12 inches, right on that main first rib there. The hinge starts at about 3.5, so that's 7. So 7 to 12 inches is where that hinge is. These hinges are, it looks to be 3 1/4 long, so that's going to be 6.5. This one looks to be 2.5, so 5 inches long. So that's about right when they say it's an inch shorter. But it has to be, and that blocking has to be at least from 3.5, which is, well, less than that, 3 1/4. So 6 inches down to 12 inches. And they have it on here, about 6.5, and comes short of 12, about 11 7/8. So I'm going to put some blocking in there. I don't like how short this is. I'm going to bring it out another inch so that it's going to be at least a 13, so that that hinge is going to sit between, what we say, 6.5 and 12. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room there, because this will be the main bracing for the flap hinges, because the flap hinge is at the top, so this will be through near the top, right where that bracing is, for the flaps. So I'm just going to make that blocking, make sure it's long enough to cover that entire distance. Let me just measure it one more time there. So it's starting at 3.5, just short of 3.5, so just short of 7 inches. They have it on here, about 6 5/8 starting. So that's about right, I guess. 6 3/4. It's giving you a little bit of play in there, not a heck of a lot. And it goes right to 12 inches. And that's just about, and you can see where it ends, just at that first rib there. So it goes to 12 inches. So, yeah, that should be good. I'd like to give it a little more space in there, because this one doesn't even come to, just comes to 11, or, yeah, it'd be 11 7/8. From 6 5/8, let's say. So I'm just going to make that one just a touch longer than it shows there, just to make sure it's good. It doesn't look like there's anything else in there, so I should be safe with doing that. And just when the flap bracket, when the flap hinge goes in there, I want to make sure that I've got backing there for the hinge. All right, I'm going to do one more little one right there. These ones are all done where the hinge is going to be and where the hinge is going to be, and I measured those up and it falls right in the middle there. So those should be all fine. I just didn't like how short this one was compared to how long these ones were. Even though this is an inch shorter, the hinge, the blocking is considerably shorter than the hinge there. All right.